Hey guys, here with another video today showing you how to replace your water pump on a TJ Jeep. This is a 1997 Jeep Wrangler Sport. This has a 4-liter engine in it. This obviously, all you Jeep fans know, I'm not really a Jeep fan. I don't really know all the certain designations, but I believe this is a TJ. I think this is from 1997 to 2006. I am unsure if this engine is in all of those years. I do know that this engine is pretty old though, maybe even back to like the late 80s, maybe 87 or 88. Obviously it's probably changed a little bit between the years of the Jeeps, but nonetheless this is a 4-liter. The water pump is pretty easy to get at. It's not too bad. You do have to take a few things off. I'm going to go ahead and replace the upper radiator hose while I'm here and the lower radiator hose. Fortunately for me, this Jeep is, lifted as most of them are, so I really don't have to jack it up or anything like that. But as you can tell, I've already got my coolant draining already, and I'll show you guys where that's at. If you just go on the passenger side, now I know that some of these are right-hand drive, the passenger side in America, the drain is just right here on the very bottom corner. Just loosen up that wing nut and the coolant will come out. As you can tell, I have it barely unscrewed right now. I wish there was some form of a drop or dip tube that you can attach a hose to, but pretty much this is messy. If you open that thing all the way up, coolant will literally go all over the place, everywhere. There is no chance of catching it at all. As you can see, I've already got some coolant and whatnot on the shocks, and that's just kind of how it went. But nonetheless, go ahead and drain all of the coolant out. You will notice that on the oil pan back there, just back there, there has been a constant drip of coolant running down the oil pan and down towards the bag. That's pretty much a dead giveaway that the water pump on this thing is given out. They do have weep holes on them to let you know that they are failing or have failed. So if you do notice that there's coolant leaking just below your crank pulley, down the front of the oil pan, and dribbling down to the back, guarantee that your water pump is ready. So I'm going to go back up top now and start taking things apart and show you guys what you need to do. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and apologize way ahead of time for the wind. It's windy outside, and hopefully this video comes out okay. I'll do my best to try and talk over the wind and try to minimize it if I can. But just understand that, I just can't help that. So the first thing I'm going to actually do is remove this coolant reservoir. It's just attached by a small little hose to the top of the radiator there. And if you look right at the front of it, there is a little nub right here at the very top. If you look just below that, there is another one down here that you can kind of press in and lift this up. So first I'm going to take this hose off of here, and then going ahead and just press that little nub in, and this should lift up out of here just like that. The little nub is right here. Just kind of push that in and lift this up and move it out of the way. Alright, the very next thing you want to do is to get rid of this upper radiator hose. Just held on one clamp here, one clamp here. Go on ahead and loosen and remove this. I've already loosened up this top one right here. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this one up here. So, should be able to kind of maneuver them around. Shouldn't be any coolant that comes out of the top, but like I said, I'm going to go ahead and replace these. So remove this one. Alright, after you get that done, the next thing you want to do is to remove this here clutch fan. Now you can see, if you look just on the front of the water pump, there are 4 13mm nuts that are holding it on. Sorry, I'm trying to zoom in on them so you can see just those nuts there. Best to leave the belt attached, and all I did was just use a normal box end wrench to break those loose. You can just try and get to them as you can. If you need to rotate the engine around, you can do so likely by just turning one of these pulleys right here. Like, say for instance, the pulley right here that's right next to it, I believe that's maybe a 15mm bolt. If you just use that, turn it clockwise, since the belt tension's still on here, likely this whole thing should spin around and give you access to the rest of them. But I've already broken the top 2 loose up there, excuse the sun. I've already broken them loose, so pretty much you just need to loosen these up, loosen them, don't remove them completely yet, just loosen them up. If you remove them completely, then you run the chance of this fan falling into your radiator and then ruining your radiator. So you need to loosen those up. And then we also need to remove this fan shroud, which is held on by 4 13mm bolts. There's one just here on the top. There's one directly below it down there on the bottom. I know you can't see it, but it's just straight below this one. And then if we go around to the other side, here, you can see that there's one right here also, and then one straight down below that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the fan and the shroud now. You want to, as soon as you get all of these, you can loosen and remove all of the ones from the shroud. And then when you got that loose, go on ahead and loosen up the rest of the bolts on the fan, and then everything should come out as one. Alright, I've made a mistake in telling you that they are 13s. The bolts that are actually holding on the shroud are all 11mm bolts. I mean, they're probably, you know, an American size, but I'm using an 11mm and it fits very snug. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this fan shroud and the fan out. Alright, we got the fan and the shroud out of the way now. We can work on getting the rest of this water pump off. So if you're looking at the front of this thing, first thing we need to do is to take the belt off. I highly suggest taking a picture of the belt routing before you take it off. And when you do take the belt off, this pulley right here on the front is going to be very loose, so just make sure it doesn't fall off. But in order to get the belt off, if you look just by the power steering pump here, there's a tiny little bolt right here. This is a 15mm bolt. It actually is a tensioner for this pulley down here. So if you just loosen up this here 15mm bolt, this should release the tension on the belt. You may actually have to loosen up this 15mm as well, because from what I can gather, you know, you're going to tighten this up to put tension on the belt, and then you would lock the pulley into place. So what I'm going to do is loosen this slightly. I'm not going to take it all the way off, just going to loosen this and then go on ahead and loosen this up, and this pulley should start, you know, heading down towards the ground, and that should give you enough slack to get the belt off. Now would be a good time to replace your belt if it's bad. Sorry, the lighting is just really bad right now. It shows a great time to work on this, but you can see there is this pipe right here that I just was mentioning, runs up to the heater core back here. So I'm going to be loosening this clamp right here and taking this hose off. This pipe actually goes straight down into the water pump. I know you can't really see it down there, but it does go into the water pump, and it is attached to the water pump with the, you know, kind of like a hex kind of nut. You can try and break it loose while this is bolted to the car. It might be beneficial to do that, but you may not be able to get a great angle at it, so that's why I'm just going to remove it. But if we're just looking at this here now, the water pump, you can see there are the power steering pump brackets that are just here and one below right here. You have to loosen these up. I believe those are 15mm. Let me double check. No, I don't think those are 15mm. Maybe they are 14mm. Well, you know, I'm kind of unsure what size these are, because I've now tried a 14. The 14 fits the bottom one, you know, very snug. It's on there now. But when I try and take that same 14 and put it onto the top one, it doesn't want to go on very easily. So I'm personally going to use a 14. I'm sorry, I don't know if maybe someone was already in here and changed these bolts, but I know for sure a 15 doesn't work at all whatsoever. So I am for sure that the water pump bolts, those are 13mm, as I have them all on here now. There's one here, one right there, one on the left, and one on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen up all of those now, and then I am going to loosen and remove these power steering pump bracket bolts. And then we also need to move this power steering pump kind of just up out of the way. If you look just behind here, there's one screw right here that I believe is a 13. Let me not lie to you guys. Yeah, a 13. So you see you'll access it by spinning this around. I can't really get you a good angle at it, but there's one bolt here, one bolt here, so you just spin this around and get to the head of the bolt. And then there's actually below this bolt, right below it, there's another one. So there should be 3 total holding it on. And then you'll want to actually take this power steering assembly here and kind of just pull it up to your right over here out of the way. You don't have to disconnect any lines or anything, you just kind of have to move it out of the way. And that's in order to be able to get the power steering pump bracket out of the way so that we can pull the water pump off. So I know I'm yapping a lot, but let me just take it off and show you guys where we're at. Alright, you see me take off the power steering pump, which I just have rested over here on the side. Remember, it was the 3 13mm bolts here, and then I actually loosened to remove both the front bracket bolts that are here and here. So there's only one more bolt that's holding this bracket on. It's pretty much loose, but if you look just behind this here, there's a bar right here that goes headed straight back to the block. There's one more bolt in there that, let me make sure and verify that size. I mean, a 15 fits, but it's loose, just where this socket is at right here. So it could actually be a 14 as well. Let me stick that on there and see if that fits better. Yeah, the 14 fits solid, so I'm gonna go ahead and use a 14mm. But you can see it's just right here where my finger is down there. There's one more bolt right there you can loosen and remove, and then this whole bracket should come off, and that will give us the capabilities to be able to remove the 4 13mm bolts, along with loosening up the hose clamp on there, and should be good to go. The little pipe here I was talking about right here is a hex head right here where my finger's at. So if you can loosen this up right now, it might help you get it off easier rather than trying to wrench on this when it's on the ground. I mean, if you have a bench vise, that probably will help, but you can try and loosen this up here now with just an adjustable wrench. I'll visit that in a moment. Let me get this bracket off, and then we can touch bases on that here in a minute. Alright, got the bracket off. Now the next thing I'm going to do is take off this lower radiator hose. Of course, you could have did this in the beginning, but I don't like struggling to get to the clamp. As you can see now, the clamp is wide open and I can get to it. So just this clamp here and the other clamp at the bottom of the radiator, there very likely might be coolant still in this, so just put a catch pan or something underneath it to catch whatever coolant comes out. Not going to show you guys how to do that. I'm just going to pull this hose off, and after that we can go on ahead and pull off this water pump. Remember the 4 bolts, and then this hose right here, this heater hose, take that clamp off, take that hose off, and then when we loosen up the bolts, we should be able to get this water pump off without any issue. So I'm going to go ahead and knock all this out. Alright, got all the water pump bolts off, the hose, heater hose disconnected. You probably want to put a catch pan under this because likely there's going to be some coolant still in the block. So, I mean, do your best to catch what you can. But this now should come off. You might have to tap it a little bit with like a mallet or something like that to get it off, but it should come off. Alright, got the water pump off. Obviously there's some coolant here. Do your best to clean that up. What you want to do is just take a razor blade and just scrape off all of this excess gasket material and just get it as clean as you can, and should be ready to go with that with the new gasket. I personally use a little bit of RTV. I'll run a bead on here, and then I'll run a bead on the water pump just because that's what I like to do. because I don't want to be down here doing this again when it's leaking. So just make sure you clean all that up real good. And then looking at the water pump here, this is the pipe that you need to remove. This could be challenging. If you have a bench vise, you can stick this in a vise and break this loose. I'm pretty sure this is a 19 millimeter, at least when I stick a 19 on there, it fits fine. And you'll need to break this loose and transfer it over to this pump. Do remember the orientation I wish it was at. Do your best to get it kind of close, you know, just place it like this and you can kind of get the idea of where it needs to go up to. Obviously you can tighten this up more when it's in the car, but you can tell that this pump definitely failed because it was leaking right out of the weep hole. All this rusty looking water was just weeping right out of there. And this is what drips, and it drips down your oil pan, and that's just kind of where you're at. So you want to make sure that you get the new gasket on here and some RTV if you would like, and go on ahead and put the bolts back on. Alright, so I went on ahead and got the new water pump installed, got the gasket installed. I went on ahead and transferred over that pipe I was mentioning, got that back reconnected, and so now we're pretty much just doing the reverse of what we did. I'm going to go on ahead and stick the lower radiator hose on now, since remember I have a lot of access to the clamp. Get that new hose installed, or if you're reusing your old hose, that's fine too, if it's still good. Going ahead and install that, and after that we're going to put the power steering bracket, which is this guy right here, if you'll remember. This goes, this sits on the motor like so, with this bracket bolted to the block, and then these two bolts will go into the water pump, and the 3 bolts to attach the power steering pump. So I'm going to go ahead and get the new hose on the bottom and get this bracketry back on. New water pump in, power steering pump back installed. Remember the 3 13 millimeter bolts that you have to get from the hole in the pulley. I got the lower radiator hose on, I got the power steering bracket on, obviously. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and put the belt back on, and if you took a picture of it, you can put it on. Once you get it all routed up, what you need to do is remember this tensioner bolt right here, which I believe is the 15 millimeter. You'll need to tighten that up to take the tension up. Then once you're done, tighten this pulley right here, which I believe is a 15 millimeter also, to lock it in. So it doesn't need to be too tight, just tight enough, but don't forget to tighten this pulley up, otherwise, you know, it won't keep the tension, and this pulley eventually will just vibrate off. And also don't forget to put the single idler pulley back on. Remember, we took it off in order to get this water pump pipe out, so bolt that guy back on and tighten it down as well. So let me get all that stuff back on, get right back to you guys in a moment. Got the belts on, got the tensioner tightened. I do have one nut right there holding on the pulley. That way I can keep the pulley for the fan flush, so I can get the proper tension on the belt. So now that I got that tension correctly, I'm going to take that one nut off. And then pretty much what you got to do now is kind of finesse the fan and the shroud in there. And then if you remember, it's held on by the bolts on the side, the 4 bolts that are holding the shroud, and then the 4 13 millimeter nuts that are holding the fan clutch to the pulley there. So I'm not really going to show you how to do that. You guys can probably figure out how to just finesse that in there and get that all sorted out. But let me get that in there, and then the very last thing we'll do is put the upper radiator hose on, and then fill it up with coolant and make sure there's no leaks. Right, got everything back onto the car, got the water pump on, upper radiator hoses on, fan shroud, everything back on. Everything is tightened up. Actually went on ahead and reinstalled the coolant overflow, which just slides down into place and you hook the hose back up. So all that's left to do now is just to fill up the cooling system, turn the heater to hot inside, and just bleed the coolant. Aside from that, this is a pretty straightforward job. Probably take you about an hour or so if you have never worked on one before. Someone experienced probably could do this in about 35 minutes, I would think. It's not too hard, but yeah, if you guys have any comments or questions, just leave them in the comment section below. Appreciate you guys stopping by the channel as usual. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on your way out. Thanks guys for watching.